Good morning. This week's Torah portion is Teruma. We begin a new subject, the building of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the temporary portable dwelling place for God, which became the prototype for the Bet HaMikdash in Jerusalem built by King Solomon, and ultimately every synagogue in the world is modeled after the first sanctuary. And for this entire second half of the book of Exodus, we're going to discuss the building of this Mishkan, the construction. It expands 5 Torah portions. And what's fascinating is that in the beginning of Genesis, God creates the world. And in 31 verses, in the 6 days of creation, He builds and constructs the entire universe with all of the planets and the galaxies. But for us to build a small miniature tabernacle, the Torah devotes a half a book of the Torah, 5 Torah portions, with hundreds and hundreds of verses, describing every minute detail of the construction of the Mishkan. And the question is, why is this subject given so much focus? And in addition to the fact that it's a dwelling place for God, and it will be the permanent dwelling place for God in every Jewish community until this very day, 3,300 years later, the Torah is telling us that for God to create a home for mankind, there's nothing revolutionary about that. That's easy. But for man to create a dwelling place for God here in this world, that is the most revolutionary idea. And therefore it deserves and receives a half a book of the Torah, 5 Torah portions. But what's fascinating is when you read it, the account, the next 5 Torah portions deals with the most minute details, precise measurements of every item, all the hooks and the beams and the sockets and the curtains. And the question is, why do we need to know all these details? And the answer perhaps is that God is telling us is that I am not just found in the lofty, abstract ideas and distant realms, but you can find me in every single detail, specificity of your life. Judaism is a religion which says that for God to dwell, God is in the details. It's in every minute detail and decision that we make, we can find God. God is not just found in high spiritual, lofty realms, but in the physical, mundane, the way we construct our lives, down to every detail is where we find God. And that's the idea of Hashgacha Pratit, divine providence. God can be seen, experienced, felt in every detail of our life. I want to share with you an experience we had just yesterday, and a remarkable experience of divine providence. Every Shabbat I give a class 1 hour before Mincha. At 4:30 yesterday we had a Torah class. And we sat down, a group of people, and a new person walked in that we'd never seen. We welcomed him to the synagogue and he joined the Torah class and he participated. And as we were going through the Torah portion, we came upon the law for prohibiting, God forbid, human trafficking. The Torah says, "V'gonev ishu mecharo," if somebody kidnaps a person and sells the person, the penalty is capital punishment. And I started to talk about the prohibition against human trafficking, and I said to the class, it's amazing that the Torah wrote this law 3,300 years ago, but it still takes place. And I said, I just traveled to Vail, Colorado last week. I was shocked. I went into the bathroom, and there's a sticker on the mirror as I'm washing my hands that says, if you know of anyone that is a victim of human trafficking, please call this hotline. The penalty is such and such. And I said, wow, there's so much awareness given to human trafficking. And then in the airport, as I was waiting for my flight, I hear announcements about the human trafficking. If anyone you know is a victim of human trafficking, please notify officials right now. I said, I didn't realize human trafficking was such a problem in Florida that it's announced in the airport and on the window, on the mirrors of the bathrooms. And I'm telling this to the class. And I said, look, the Torah's law is so much a problem till today. And one of the women in the class said, Rabbi, was the sign only in English or was it in Spanish too? And I said, I tell you the truth, I didn't notice. I read it in English. I didn't know if it was in Spanish. And then this man speaks up, a young man, and he says, I don't want to brag, but I used to be a Florida state legislator. Now I'm a Palm Beach County commissioner. I used to be a police officer as well. And I wrote the bill 369, requiring that every public space, including airports, have to have signs about human trafficking. And the sign has to be in English, in Spanish, and in Braille, he said. And he said, since they set up this law where throughout the state of Florida there are signs in every public restroom and airport and any other public space, he said we get about 80,000 calls a year to the hotline. And we said, what's your name? And he said, my name is David Kerner, and he's one of the Palm Beach County Commissioners. I said, what brings you? He says, I was just decided I want to connect to my faith and come to synagogue, and I looked up your synagogue and I attended. And we said to ourselves, what are the chances that a woman says, was the sign just in English or in Spanish? And I bring up this sign, and the person who wrote the bill 369, requiring that, is a young Jewish man who happened to come to Palm Beach Synagogue for the first time. God is in every detail of our lives. God is ever present. And when we build a home for God, God tells us, focus on the details of your life and see the hand of God, because it's present everywhere. Have a beautiful day.